This is segment 3. This is where I'm going to talk about some of the mediums and the varnishes that you can use with water-soluble oil paints. Turn my phone sideways here so we can see a little bit. Alright, first off, I've got it on this end. I've got a safflower oil. Safflower oil is nice. I've used the safflower and stand oil and linseed oil, and they work for their intended purpose. They seem to thin out and create flow with the oil paint, and they do a good job of it. They take a million years to dry, so if you're trying to get your painting to dry quicker, you can't just use that plain. Used to be, with traditional oils, I'd use a mixture that involved some of these different oils, and I would add a cobalt dryer that would speed up the drying process, but with traditional oils you can do that. With water soluble, it doesn't seem to be an option. So what I was really trying to do is figure out how to replace stuff like liquin, and if any of you have the Artist's Handbook by Meyer, he comes up with a mixture that's 1 part turpentine, 1 part Damar varnish, 1 part stand oil, and then some cobalt dryer. And that was a fantastic mixture for glazing, but since I've stepped away from the traditional oils, I've been trying to find a replacement for that as well. So this is kind of some of the stuff that I've landed on. This is a painting medium by Cobra. It works okay. Not my favorite, and it's actually been a while since I've used it, which is why this one's still in a box, and it doesn't dry nearly as fast as the one I use now does. So it takes a little while to dry, and I'm not sure if the quality is there. It seems like it was a little bit lower quality. They haven't quite refined the mixture perfectly, it seems like. Glazing medium, kind of the same way. Glazing medium is nice, but actually it's the same thing as with this one. The water doesn't tend to mix with it very well. And if you're going to glaze, it seems like you need to thin this stuff out a little bit, and it doesn't work very well with the water. It mixes great with the paint, and if you add it with the paint, you add water with the glazing medium and the paint, it does okay. But to get a really thin stained glass look varnish or glazing over the top, it doesn't quite do what you need. This one, on the other hand, the one from Winsor & Newton, the Artisan, is a great product. It's by far the best one that I've found. The best medium that's pre-mixed, ready to go, that I've found at all. I mean, when you're plein air painting, it doesn't dry out. It stays as a pretty good consistency. When it dries, it seems like it seems to flash. And flashing is not quite the word, I don't think, because it's not a volatile organic, but one day it's wet and the next day it's dry, kind of a thing. This takes probably about a week to dry. It's going to make a difference whether you use a lot of medium or a little medium, but it does react very, very favorably with water, whereas some of these other mediums do not. It thins out good, creates a nice consistency, and dries a lot closer to what I'm used to. It doesn't dry as fast as liquin. Liquin dries like overnight or something like that. I mean, within a few days. It does dry about as fast as the mixture that I was referring to out of Ralph Meyer's book. This one is actually a new medium that I haven't tried out yet, and I'm hoping that it works good, but I'll have to get back to you on that one. This is a new one that I just ran into that Lucas made, and Lucas is kind of spotty on how good their stuff works, so it might work great and it might be terrible, so I'll have to get back to you on that one. Another medium that's out there is the one by Holbein, and it's terrible. The Holbein medium, it creates a film if it sits out for too long, so it's obviously air activated, which I'm sure all of them are, but it dries a film on top of it. It doesn't react with water very favorably. It seems to mix funny. I just expected a whole lot more from Holbein. Their paints are phenomenal, and their mediums aren't phenomenal. They're actually, you know, I hate to say it, and I love Holbein, but they've got to have one of the worst mediums in the water-soluble market, unless they've recently changed it. So, big proponent of Holbein, but I'd steer clear of their medium till they come out with something new. Some of the varnishes that I've looked at, this is a water-soluble gloss varnish from Winsor & Newton. Not a huge fan. It only seems to apply to the painting after the painting's been dried a very long time, and even then it seems like you only have like a certain window where this actually applies really well. It's odd. I don't know, it's never worked very well for me. Gamvar, on the other hand, which is made traditionally, I mean, it's made for traditional oils, is fantastic, and it's the only varnish on the market that I'm aware of, besides a retouch, that can actually be used before the paint fully cures, which is like 6 months to a year. So this one can be applied after it's dry to the touch, which is just a game changer. I mean, it's fantastic stuff. Gamblin should be seriously congratulated with coming up with such a fantastic varnish. It really is a great varnish. And I'll tell you why it's great is because, you know, what I do is my paintings that are water soluble, they'll dry for a week, and then I usually wait for another week just to be sure that they're nice and dry. And then I apply the Gamvar, and it's beautiful. It's fantastic. And Gamvar's come up with a certain way to make it, I mean, they're great. This actually works for oils, acrylics, alkyds. So I've taken a next step and used it for water-soluble oils. But it gives it a nice sheen, it protects it, and lets the paint still breathe. I don't know how they did it, but it works. Some of the other stuff that I've used, some other varnishes, I've used retouch varnish, I've used the spray varnishes, I've used, you know, like Kamar and Damar varnishes, and I've also used the, the Utrecht varnish. And what happens is you've got to let them dry a very long time. Very long time. You cannot varnish actually any oil painting with a lot of those until after they've dried for 6 months. So that's kind of a time constraint. But if you do, because I've accidentally applied the Utrecht varnish to a painting that wasn't fully cured, and you know what happens is it doesn't stick quite right, and it does something to the paint. It actually causes it to be sticky for a prolonged period of time, like a year plus, and then everything attracts to it, all the dust and stuff, and I think eventually the painting that I did it to dried. And I never sent the painting out because it was a bonehead move, but it got sticky. Now, and I've done that with a couple other ones, like ones that are dry to the touch. I've gone through and used some retouch varnish, which is what a lot of artists do, especially with plein air shows and stuff like that. Don't do it with water soluble. Just don't do it. It makes it tacky and funny and weird, and it doesn't seem to dry the way it needs to dry. Put it in the show the way it is, and then after the fact, after a week or two, if the painting sells, contact the client and say, hey, I need to varnish it. I'm going to put a nice varnish on it instead of just spray this retouch varnish. It's just the only way to do it. With water soluble, honestly, I haven't found anything else that tops Gamvar. If you don't use Gamvar, you're gonna have problems. You're gonna have a lot of heartache. I've had a lot of you know, it's been a lot of trial and error with varnishes and with mediums. So I hope this helps anybody who's looking into doing water soluble, because it's made a huge difference finding products that actually work.